Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Odell from Jason Odell Photography. You probably know me from my website, luminescentphoto.com. It's good to be here. I'm glad you're joining me on this afternoon uh, on Groundhog Day. Anyway, I want to present today a little uh, informational session on photographing Central American wildlife in Panama, of all places. I've been down to Panama now on three occasions, and each time has been amazing. So I wanted to share some photos and share a little bit about my experience down there. And at the end, I'll talk about a trip that I've got coming up this fall that you uh, could join me on. So to start off, I'll introduce our topic here with just a little bit about Panama, the geography, the country, and the geology, because it's quite interesting, and of course the canal. And then I'll shift over into the wildlife of Panama and sort of present photos that I've gotten on my travels there, along with some pictures along the way of how I got there. And then I'll close with some information on my 2024 wildlife photo safari down to Isla Bastimentos. So if we start off just a little bit about Panama, this is not a geology class, but it's a relatively recent formation. Prior to about 3 million years ago, Panama did not exist. There was a big gap between North America and South America. And through volcanic activity over millions of years, it eventually closed up. And prior to Panama, there was one ocean basically, and animals could go through between these areas and currents. Afterwards, after the volcanic activity about 3 million years ago, you have a major event, and that it's now closed off between the north side here, which is the Atlantic or Caribbean, and the south side or the Pacific. And Panama City is right about here on this map. Okay. And that was tremendous in terms of what it did for animals, plants, all kinds of stuff, because species that used to be able to freely move between the Pacific and Atlantic side were now cut off from each other, and that can lead to things like speciation events. More importantly, as well, for things like mammals, all of a sudden there was a pathway between North and South America. So this is tremendous biodiversity exchange between South American animals and North American animals, and they could all go across through Panama. And what it ended up resulting in was tremendous biodiversity. In other words, a lot of different species, birds, mammals, plants, reptiles, all kinds of stuff, fishes. So in Panama, you've got 220 species of mammals, 164 species of amphibians, 226 species of reptiles, and almost 1,000 species of birds. They're all just down there. So it's a great place to visit in terms of biodiversity, and it's often overlooked because I think if I were to say Central American biodiversity, you would probably say Costa Rica. And you wouldn't be wrong. It's got a tremendous amount of biodiversity, but Panama is right there with it. And to get to Panama, it's quite easy. You fly to Panama City, and it's actually a very modern city, along with a historic old town area. Panama is tremendously important in financial industry, in the banking, finances, all of the stuff that all the commerce that comes through the canal is handled through Panama City. So if you were to go to Panama City and open your eyes there one day from a hotel room and look out, you might think you were in Atlanta. One of my clients actually said this. You would not think you were in Central America. Okay, it's very modern there. But there's the old town too. So you can go down there and photograph things like the cathedral. I mean, these were from the 16, 1700s, old cars, colorful buildings, all kinds of fun things. And that's just right there in Panama City. It's very safe for the most part, especially if you're a tourist. They they like American tourists and they like our dollars. So it's pretty safe down there. And of course, if you think about Panama, the first thing that probably pops in your mind is not wildlife, but instead you think of the Panama Canal. And the Panama Canal, obviously, it's important because it really its construction is impressive. Uh, it took a long time to build. France started it; that was their idea. The U.S. came in the early 1900s and finished it. And you've probably heard of the locks because there's differences in sea level between the center here and either ocean. You've got the Pacific side, you've got the Atlantic side, and there's locks on either side. Now, over here by Panama City, you can go to the Miraflores locks, and you can sometimes see ships go through. And there's basically a river that goes through here, and then the entire center is this thing called Gatun Lake, and it was created through damming of rivers. So this whole area got flooded, and when it got flooded, it created these little islands all over through here. And that's one of the places that we'll be able to visit because there's wildlife on these little islands and you can go out and see them. I'll talk about that in a moment. So we can go out on the canal and kind of cool. So the reason I go to Panama is to photograph wildlife. It's not to get a tan, although that's optional. You can do that too. This is the bridge that's going over. This is the Pacific side from Panama City. I just walked out there, and here is the entrance to the Panama Canal itself, part of this channel. The first thing that you can do if you're in Panama City is I took my group last year to a place called Monkey Island. It's not really named that. It's one of those islands that are out on the Panama Canal. So here's the canal. So you've gone through the locks. Panama City would be to the right here. And this leads you to the Gatun Lake. And all these little islands are created. And we go out on a boat. It's a tour. It's a fun little thing. And you go between these islands, and they know exactly where you're going to. The monkeys know you're coming. They feed them bananas. The monkeys will actually come down on boat. But it's a sanctuary. They've put monkeys out there to, that would otherwise be, in people's yards. And you can see several different species: capuchins, the Jeffroy's tamarin, howler monkeys. These are some shots that I got there last year when I went to Panama. These are right from a boat. And so, and this little guy here on the bottom left with his tongue out, he actually came down onto the deck. You could take pictures of them with your iPhone if you wanted to. So after spending a couple nights in Panama City, seeing both the city, the locks, and going out on a tour, we can journey to the island of Bocas del Toro, Isla Bastimentos. Bocas del Toro is on the northwestern corner of Panama. So it's on the Atlantic or Caribbean side, actually. And it's about 10 miles from the Costa Rican border. So animals there are going to be very similar to the ones you would find in Costa Rica. And you go to the little airport in Panama and you take an Air Panama flight. And then our hosts from this eco lodge called Tranquilo Bay, they pick us up in a boat and we go out by boat to get there. This is what it's like being on that boat. Just real smooth. You put your luggage up in the front here, cover it up with tarps because sometimes you get rained on. We hope not. But it's a fun little, about a 30-minute boat ride to get to the Eco Lodge. And here's where it is. You fly in to Bocas del Toro, which is right here. It's a vacation kind of town. It's a spring break kind of town. And then our little boat picks us up. We go through here all the way around to Tranquilo Bay. And the Tranquilo Bay Eco Adventure Lodge, as it's called, is on this island. The island itself is a national park. So they're on private land that is abutting a national park, including the rainforest and the marine areas around it, the reefs and the coral. It is operated by Americans. The couple of expats from Texas and their partners have started building this about 15 or 20 years ago, and they've built it up. So it's a completely modern facility. There are a series of cabanas They're all air conditioned. They all have their own UV ozone purified water system. And when you're at this eco lodge, everything is included. These are the excursions they offer for people who go down there as tourists, but we go down there as photographers, and it's really fun. And this is what it's like in the morning and into Tranquilo Bay. So if you step out of your cabana in the morning at sunrise, this is what you'll see. And you'll hear birds singing and parrots flying by and all kinds of stuff. Okay. Some more things from the site, just so you know. There's the lagoon. This is where you come into. If people wanted to go snorkeling, you can. They have dive masks. But more importantly, there's this big 85-foot tall observation tower that they built. It's totally safe. It's sturdy. There's a little trap door at the top there. You can see that little hole, but it's stairs. You just go up, climb up through the trap door, and you're on this platform. And when you're on the platform, you can see birds at treetop levels. You can watch the parrots go by. And then when you're done birding, there's a naturalist guide there with you to help you not only spot but identify the species. You go back in and you have a wonderful home cooked meal 3 times a day. Um, it's a really nice experience. So just on site, I'm going to share some photos of birds that I captured over the last few years. That these were all captured on site. This is a female or juvenile, I should say, shining honey creeper, and they like to eat these berries um, from these trees. And so, just depending on what's fruiting at that time, will dictate where the birds are. They love those berries. This is a ant bird. This is an ant bird that I came across while under the canopy. So this is kind of a high ISO shot that I got, just come around to. It's an ant shrike, excuse me, black-crowned ant shrike. I'm not the birder that a lot of people are. Um, you can also see silver-beaked tanager, this beautiful red bird. I saw one of these actually in Panama City, but you can see them on the island as well. Another unique bird species is the golden collared manakin. And if you ever took an animal behavior class in college, like I did getting my PhD, the mannequin males have a juvenile partner and they dance and they do these little elaborate dances in a cleared out area that they build called a lek. It's specifically there just to try to attract females. And the male and its juvenile immature partner have to do this little dance and they snap their wings. You can hear them even if you don't see them, you'll hear them. And it's a really cool bird to come across. And they have a couple of leks on site there where these can sometimes be seen. Here's the mature male shining honey creeper, that same bird I showed you at the beginning. And then there's lots of hummingbirds on site too. They have feeders put out so that you can kind of stake out a hummingbird feeder, and you never know who's going to come by. So this is a teeny little thing called a stripe-throated hermit hummingbird. They're extremely small, maybe 2 inches long, 3 inches long. Here's an emerald hummingbird, and they like to feed on these verbena plants. So they're not the easiest things to photograph, but they're there, and it's a good way to spend a morning getting practice with your bird acquisition skills. Other birds we'll see on site, the crested oropendola. They come by in these large gregarious flocks. They're loud. They have pretty yellow tails, and you'll see them, and they create these hanging nests that are woven. They look like teardrops, like like a tennis ball and a sock almost hanging from the trees. Now, this is just stuff I've seen around the site. You go up in the tower, and you'll see more things. Again, it's good to be mobile here and have either, be able to handhold your camera or use a monopod. This is the view. I apologize for the crooked horizon here, but this is a pano that I shot probably with my phone. But this is looking out towards where the dock is right here. So this looks out. And then here's some birds. These are all photographed from the tower on site um, at Tranquilo Bay. Pileated woodpecker, mealy Amazon parrot. And this next one is a bird I had never even heard of. It's called a green ibis. I had one chance to get this shot, one shot of it. You see the green there on its head. You normally don't see that at all. It's iridescent, and if the sun doesn't hit it just right, you won't see that. And it's kind of funny because I showed this picture to the guide when I got it. It flew by early morning. I had one shot. Um, he couldn't believe that I got the green. He says, nobody gets this picture. I can't believe that. That was cool. But they're there, stubby little tails. Um, then there's other species. It's not just birds, even though they're kind of the stars of the show. You got reptiles and amphibians, lizards. These are all on site. Some of these I took with a flash. Some of them were just natural light. This is an emerald basilisk. Pretty cool to see those guys. These are the lizards that you've seen in the nature shows that run across the surface of the water sometimes. That's these basilisk lizards. There's also a species of poison dart frog. This is the strawberry poison dart frog, or sometimes called blue jeans poison dart frog because of the way its coloration on its hind legs look. And sometimes you'll see a very much non-venomous snake. And so they're out there, but most of the time you don't see them. The other big reason why I love going to Panama and specifically Tranquilo Bay is because there's sloth populations. There are two species of sloths in Tranquilo Bay, three-toed and two-toed. And on Tranquilo Bay, on this island, on Isla Bastimentos, the sloths come out in the open for you. They are out in broad daylight, hanging from trees. Sometimes they're as far close as, just under a tree, like 6 feet from you, right over your head sometimes. Again, you could almost use your phone to take pictures of them. You can get so close. Obviously, we give them their space. But the big deal about it is that if you go to mainland Panama, if you go to Costa Rica and you see a photo of a sloth, it's going to look like a backlit silhouette blob at the top of a cecropia tree or something like that. And you'll say, see that blob? That was a sloth. Or maybe you went to a sloth sanctuary where you could see them. On Isla Bastimentos, the sloth's primary predator, which is the famous harpy eagle, does not exist. They don't have any. The harpy eagles just aren't there. And that means their main predator isn't out to get them. They don't look like lunch. And for us, the photographers, we can get all kinds of cool photos of them, including of this baby who came down with mama. That's mama on the right. I mean, probably 20 feet in front of me. I had to keep my distance. So you can get some amazing photos of these sloths. They look like they're smiling. And it's wonderful. And who doesn't like sloths, right? So I've never seen so many. They can sometimes be right outside in the trees around our cabanas. And what's wonderful is that while we're on site, the staff there, the guides, even the regular staff who are not the naturalists, they know what we're looking for, and they have radios, and they will say, hey, there's a sloth down by Cabana 6, and you go down there and they'll tell us, and we go find it. The other highlight of going down to Panama at this particular location is we get to have a field trip to a thing called the Snider Canal. It was a hand-dug canal built at the turn of the 20th century to transport bananas, because the river where it was, the river opening was too rough and too shallow, and the tides too unpredictable. So they wanted a safe way to get barges full of bananas and boats to go through. It never really got used for that. And instead, we take a boat trip along it. And this is what it's like. So you've got forest canopy on either side of you. And we have naturalists on our small boat out in the open looking for birds, sloths, They look for reptiles, iguanas, basilisks, and these guys are amazing at spotting them. It's absolutely incredible. So it's a fun day trip. We go from there, and then we'll get back out into the ocean side, and we go to an island that's a nesting colony for seabirds like frigate birds, and brown-footed boobies, brown boobies, and all kinds of other birds too. But I'll show you some photos from there. So these next few pictures came from shots I got uh, while on the boat trip through the canal. So a woodpecker feeding its young. I saw this toucan last year flying by. That was a great find. It was way far away, but I was able to zoom in and get a clean shot of the toucan. On the left, we've got a hakana and several species of kingfishers. They're hard because they don't like you to get close, but we were able to get some kingfishers. So the one on the top right is the belted kingfisher. Bottom right is the American pygmy kingfisher. Here's a purple gallinule, which you may have seen if you've ever been to the Everglades, but they have them down there as well. And then another bird you may have heard of, this snail kite. This was shot, I got it from the standing on the front of the boat. We were going to our lunch stop, and you'll notice this snail kite has the snail in its talons, which was pretty cool to see. So these are things that you can come across. After our lunch break, they pack us a lunch. We go out onto the ocean side where we'll see things like the red-billed tropic bird, the brown booby. Here's another brown booby over the ocean. So you get a different kinds of shots. They circle overhead, and you're in the boat and you're right by the island. You're not allowed to go onshore to the island, but you see all these birds flying around, and it's just a different change of pace. So people will ask me, this is all and then you come back to another home cooked dinner. It's really nice. So why should you consider visiting Panama? Well, its biodiversity rivals that of Costa Rica. So it's like Costa Rica, but it's not a tourist destination in the sense that to the same extent as Costa Rica is. Costa Rica is extremely popular and for good reason. Okay. But you can see most of the same species right there out in the open. And the key for me is if you really want to see sloths, this place is second to none. I can't guarantee anything in nature, but I've gone to Panama now 3 times, and every time I've gotten close-up pictures of sloths, every single time out in the open. Other reasons for Panama? Well, they're on the US dollar. They do have their own currency called the Balboa, but it's equal to the US dollar. You go to an ATM in Panama City, it gives you US dollars. Very easy to deal with. They speak English in the hotels where we stay. It's not a problem. And it's super easy to get to. And one thing about Panama is that even though it's from, say, for me, from Denver, it's about a 5.5, 6 hour flight, you're not changing more than about 2 time zones, depending on where you're coming from. Panama is on, depending on the time of year, it's usually on US Central Time, sometimes US Eastern Time, just depending on whether or not we're on, say, daylight savings. So you can go down there, fly 6 hours, but you're not jet lagged when you arrive. It's only an hour or two off. It's pretty easy to deal with. So I have one cabin left in my booking this year to visit Panama on my wildlife photo safari. It's going to do all of the things that I just showed you. It's October 18th through 26th. We fly into Panama City. We'll have 3 nights in Panama City. The first day is just to arrive, and then we'll have tours. We'll have a Monkey Island excursion by boat, and then we'll go and also do some walking tours around the old town Panama City, plus the Miraflores locks, so you can see the Panama Canal yourself. Then we will transfer by air to Bocas del Toro, and then they'll pick us up and take us to Tranquilo Bay, where we'll spend 4 nights there doing nature photography on site. And I will be there not only as your photography expert, but also as a guide. And then we'll fly back to Panama City on Friday, the 25th, transfer to a hotel right by the airport so that you can easily just use the airport shuttle and fly home the next day. If you do go to this tour, what should you bring? Well, I recommend either a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, mirrorless being the way to go these days, but you can have either. Um, if you're shooting on a full frame body or similar, you want to have at least 400 millimeters. And that's not really long enough, but with that and a high resolution body or adding a teleconverter, you're usually able to crop in. So last year I shot there, the last few times I was there with the 100 to 400 Nikon and a 1.4 teleconverter, and I was still cropping in using 1.5 crop on my Nikon Z9. In previous visits, I brought something like the 200 to 500. Nowadays, there's lenses like the 180 to 600 or the Sony 200 to 600. Um, those are all good options. I sometimes will bring a close-up lens, like a little macro lens, but it's not required. But those frogs can be fun to shoot, and optionally a small flash. And if your lens is on the bigger side, I don't recommend bringing a 600 f4 down there. You've got to walk around and climb stairs and do all this stuff. You want to be mobile, but I do recommend having a monopod at times because that can help take the weight off of your lens. My trip includes 3 nights in Panama City, all airport and hotel transfers. The round trip aired from Panama City to Bocas. 4 nights at the all-inclusive Tranquilo Bay, so air conditioned, all the meals, and non-alcoholic beverages. They also include guides and, of course, my photo instruction. We can set up and do processing and look at images together and get feedback on camera settings. All of that is included as the instructional component of this photo tour. We also have provided for us the boat excursion to the Snider Canal and the Bird Island, and then fly back and stay 1 night at the Panama City Airport Hotel. So that's my presentation about Panama for today, and you can find me, of course, online here. I'm going to open it up to questions, and we'll go from there.